Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into a story that's, well, it's both glamorous and unsettling. A tale that kind of blurs the lines between political power, death, and maybe even a touch of the supernatural.
Yeah, you could say that.
It's a story that takes us to Argentina, a
Oh,
nation grappling with its identity, and at the heart of it all is Eva Perón,
Evita.
a woman whose influence, extended far beyond her lifetime.
Evita's image is so iconic. I mean, the flowing hair, the elegant dresses. It's easy to get caught up in the glamour, but what we're exploring today is the story that unfolded after the cameras stopped flashing.
Absolutely. We're diving into what happened to her body after death, the lengths to which those in power went to control her image and the almost mythical status she achieved in the minds of the Argentine people.
Yeah. It's a story that takes us from the heights of political power to the shadowy world of the occult with twists and turns that you might find hard to believe actually happened.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning.
Yeah. With Evita's death in 1952 at the tragically young age of 33, the nation was plunged into mourning, and her husband, President Juan Perón, faced the daunting task of preserving her legacy.
To preserve he did, but perhaps not in the way anyone expected.
Right.
He commissioned Dr. Pedro Ara, a renowned anatomist,
Yeah.
to embalm Evita's body.
What's remarkable about this embalming process is not just its technical complexity.
Oh, wow.
Multiple baths, special injections, a final layer of plastic, but the sheer cost. I mean, $100,000 in the early 1950s was an astronomical sum.
It really speaks volumes about the importance Perón placed on maintaining Evita's image, even in death.
Yeah.
He wanted her to appear eternally youthful, almost saintly.
Exactly. It was a way to perpetuate the myth of Evita,
Mm.
the spiritual leader of the nation, as Perón declared her. And to understand the power of this myth, we need to delve into the cult that began to surround her.
I read that children were reciting prayers to Santa Evita,
Right.
placing her on par with religious figures.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how quickly this reverence took hold.
Yeah, it speaks to the void Evita filled for many Argentines. She championed social justice, fought for women's suffrage, and represented a beacon of hope for the working class.
Right.
After her death, she became an almost mythical figure, embodying the aspirations of a nation.
While the nation was mourning, Perón was grappling with the political reality of governing without Evita. He faced mounting challenges,
Right.
economic instability, growing discontent, and the pressure to fill the void left by his charismatic wife.
And he tried to emulate her connection with the people, but it just wasn't the same.
Yeah.
His authority began to wane, and his decision-making became questionable. He entered into a relationship with a 14-year-old girl,
Oh, wow.
Nellie Rivas,
Yeah.
which further tarnished his image.
It was a far cry from the Perón who had swept to power on a wave of popular support.
Yeah.
The cracks were beginning to show.
And those cracks widened as Perón's grip on power tightened.
Yeah.
He became increasingly authoritarian, imprisoning political opponents and using violence to suppress dissent. It's a stark contrast to the early days of his rule when he was seen as a champion of the people.
His actions even led to a clash with the Catholic Church,
Right?
a powerful force in Argentina.
Yes. Perón's attempts to control education and youth groups traditionally under the church's domain led to his excommunication in 1955. It was a major blow signifying a loss of support from a key institution.
It seems like everything was unraveling. Perón was losing control, the economy was faltering, and his personal life was mired in controversy.
Right.
It was a recipe for disaster, and that disaster came in the form of a military coup in 1955.
The military, fueled by a desire to eradicate Peronism and its symbols, targeted Evita's legacy. They viewed her as a threat, a powerful reminder of the movement they sought to crush.
And that brings us to perhaps the most bizarre chapter in this already strange tale.
Right.
The disappearance of Evita's body.
The military junta, obsessed with discrediting her, removed her body from the CGT headquarters where it had been displayed.
Mhm.
It marked the beginning of a long and twisted journey for Evita's remains, one that mirrors the turmoil engulfing Argentina itself.
This is where things take a truly fascinating turn.
Indeed. And in the next part, we'll delve into the secret burials, the strange figures who took possession of Evita's body, and the lengths to which they went to control her powerful legacy.
Yeah.
It's a wild ride, so so stay tuned.
Okay. So the military junta has seized power.
Yeah.
and they've whisked Evita's body away.
Right.
It's almost like they were trying to erase her from history.
Mm.
What did they do with her body?
Well, they initially buried her secretly in a cemetery in Buenos Aires.
Okay.
But the interesting part is they didn't seal her coffin properly.
Really?
Yeah, and there were these stories about flowers like appearing next to the truck that was carrying her body.
That's eerie. It's almost like people knew where she was, even though the military tried to keep it a secret.
Yeah, it is strange, and it gets even stranger.
Oh.
The head of military intelligence, Maury Koenig, he took possession of her body.
Wow.
And kept it in his office for a time.
In his office?
Yeah.
That's a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
What was his reasoning?
He never publicly explained his actions, but you have to wonder, if it was a mix of superstition, fear, and maybe even this strange sense of power that came with having Evita's remains so close.
It's almost like her body became this physical manifestation of the power struggle going on in Argentina. Whoever controlled it, in a way controlled her legacy.
That's a very insightful observation.
Yeah.
The military, they wanted to control the narrative, to diminish Evita's influence.
And of course this all happened while Perón was in exile.
Right.
Where did he end up?
He eventually settled in Madrid.
Okay.
And he remarried. His new wife, Isabel, was a former cabaret dancer.
Okay.
Who was deeply interested in spiritualism and the occult.
Okay, so we have a former dictator in exile, his spiritualist wife, and a missing body.
Right.
What could possibly happen next?
Well, this is where a rather intriguing character enters the scene.
Okay.
Jose Lopez Rega, known as El Brujo, or the Warlock. Yeah, he was a former police officer who became deeply involved in the occult.
Wow.
He was particularly drawn to a Brazilian tradition called candomblé.
Okay.
And even claimed to have received esoteric knowledge from the angel Gabriel.
This sounds like something out of a movie.
It does, doesn't it?
What was his role in all of this?
Well, he became a close advisor to Perón.
Oh, wow.
Much to the dismay of some of Perón's other allies who viewed Rega with suspicion. He had a lot of influence over Isabel, and it's been suggested that he used his occult practices to try and manipulate both of them.
It's hard to imagine this was actually happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
What sort of things was he doing?
There are stories of him performing rituals with Evita's embalmed body.
Oh, wow.
Attempting to transfer her spirit to Isabel.
Wow.
As if to imbue her with Evita's charisma.
Wow.
He even sold rejuvenation drugs with Perón's face on them.
No.
In Brazil.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a Gothic novel.
Yeah.
Was Perón aware of any of this?
The extent of Perón's knowledge about Rega's activities is debatable. What is clear, though, is that Argentina itself was going through a period of profound instability.
The economy was in shambles. There were student protests, and leftist guerrilla groups inspired by Evita's legacy were gaining power.
They saw her as a symbol of resistance against the military government and longed for the days of Peronist rule.
It sounds like Perón saw an opportunity to reclaim power amidst all of this chaos.
He did.
Yeah.
He returned to Argentina in 1973.
Okay.
But his homecoming was far from peaceful.
Uh-oh.
There was a shootout between rival Peronist factions at the airport.
Oh, wow.
A stark display of the deep divisions within the movement.
Not exactly the triumphant return he might have envisioned.
No, it was a sign of the turbulent times. Despite his declining health, Perón ran for president again in 1973.
Okay.
With Isabel as his vice president. Everyone knew he wasn't likely to survive a full term.
It was a calculated move to ensure Isabel would succeed him.
Precisely. And she did become president upon Perón's death in 1974.
Wow. A former cabaret dancer now leading a nation in turmoil. It's quite a turn of events.
It is, isn't it?
But what about Evita's body?
Right.
Was it still in the possession of the military?
It was.
Okay.
And this is where we see her legacy used as a bargaining chip, a leftist guerrilla group.
Oh.
The Montoneros, they kidnapped the body of former President Aramburu.
Wow.
The one who had initially hidden Evita's body and demanded her return in exchange for his release.
It seems like even in death, Evita's body held this immense symbolic power.
Absolutely. It had become this focal point, a representation of the hopes and frustrations of an entire nation.
So did the government agree to the exchange?
They did.
Yeah.
In 1974, Evita's body was flown back to Argentina,
Yeah.
but the grand tomb that had been planned for her, it never materialized.
And what happened to Isabel and the warlock Jose Lopez Rega?
Their fates were intertwined with the political turmoil of the time.
This story is already so complex, and I imagine it's only going to get more complicated from here.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Argentina was heading towards a very dark chapter in its history,
Yeah.
and the fate of Evita's body and the key players surrounding her would be forever intertwined with the events that unfolded.
We left off with Evita's body finally back in Argentina, a nation on the brink of a dark period. What happened next?
Well, as you hinted at, the 1970s were a brutal time for Argentina. The military staged another coup in 1976, and this ushered in the era of the Dirty War, a horrific campaign of state-sponsored terror.
This is the period when thousands of people disappeared, right?
Yeah.
Anyone suspected of opposing the regime was at risk.
That's right. It was a terrifying time.
Yeah.
The military junta, obsessed with order and control, saw any form of dissent as a threat.
Right.
And as for Evita's body, they made a decision that seemed designed to finally quell the fervor surrounding her.
Well, what did they do?
They had her body interred in her family's vault in the Recoleta Cemetery in Buenos Aires.
Okay.
It was a surprisingly modest resting place given the grand tomb that had once been planned for her.
It almost seems like an attempt to downplay her significance,
Mhm.
to make her less of a symbol.
Perhaps that was their intention, to neutralize her as a rallying point for Peronists or those opposed to the regime. But of course, with Evita, things are never quite that straightforward.
What do you mean?
Well, there are persistent rumors about her final resting place.
Oh, yeah.
Some believe that she isn't actually buried in the family vault, but rather in a secret subterranean chamber beneath
Like a
it.
secret chamber? Like something out of an Edgar Allan Poe story?
Exactly.
Right.
And the story goes that the key to this chamber was given to Evita's sister. Whether it's true or not is still a mystery.
Yeah.
But it adds another layer of intrigue to this already captivating tale.
It's fascinating how even in death, Evita's story is shrouded in mystery and speculation. What about Isabel and Jose Lopez Rega? What became of them during this turbulent time?
Isabel's time as president was short-lived. She was removed from power during the 1976 coup and placed under house arrest for 5 years before eventually being allowed to return to Spain.
It's quite a dramatic arc, from cabaret dancer to first lady to president, then deposed and imprisoned.
Indeed. And Rega's story takes an even darker turn. He was forced into exile and eventually settled in Spain.
Okay.
But in 1986, his past caught up with him. He was wanted in Argentina for his alleged involvement in death squads and corruption. He was extradited from the United States and died in prison before facing trial.
So both Isabel and Rega ultimately met with rather unhappy endings. It seems like everyone in this story was caught in a whirlwind of events they couldn't control.
That's a keen observation. Their lives, like Evita's legacy, were deeply intertwined with the political and social upheavals of Argentina.
We've covered a lot of ground today: embalming, political intrigue, exile, spiritualism, even death squads.
It's a wild story.
It's hard to believe it all revolves around one woman. Even one as captivating as Evita.
Her story, even in its afterlife, reveals the profound and lasting impact she had on Argentina. She became a symbol of hope for some, a symbol of fear for others, and her image continues to evoke strong emotions to this day.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about dates and facts. It's about the lives of individuals, their passions, their ambitions, their flaws, and how they all intersect to shape the course of events.
And sometimes those intersections lead to truly extraordinary and often unsettling stories.
Well, thank you for joining us today on the deep dive for this incredible journey through the afterlife of Eva Peron. It's a story that raises as many questions as it answers, and we hope it's left you with a sense of wonder and perhaps a desire to learn even more about this complex and fascinating figure.
And if you've enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe to the deep dive
Yeah.
for more fascinating stories that unravel the mysteries of history and the human condition.